finding us at this new time of noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. So this will be our new Messy Conversations time. We've kept the same time since we began 5 years ago. So this is a bit of a experiment today. Happy to see so many could make it. We have some regulars and some new folk, which was part of the plan, hoping maybe some new folk could join if we had a new time slot. So welcome. Um, my name is Asa Wilder. I'm the librarian on our LA campus and for undergraduate studies. And I'm a member of the Messy Conversations planning team for the past few years. Welcome to the first session of our quarter. So I did want to start off just briefly by welcoming you all and acknowledging Renee Nicole Good, who was killed by an ICE agent on Wednesday, January 7th, just a few blocks away from where George Floyd was murdered by law enforcement almost 6 years ago. And if you're familiar with the history of Messy Conversations, that event was what spurred this initiative at Antioch. And it is unfortunately quite on theme with today's session that we've kind of gone in this little cycle once again. There are people on the streets. There are militarized law enforcement agents on the streets, very similar to the time when we started these Messy Conversations. And today's session, we'll be talking about a talk by Brittney Cooper, Dr. Brittney Cooper, on the racial politics of time. And we will watch her short talk. It's about 10 minutes, and then come back together to discuss. So we'll have a very short one-question poll when we come back together, and then we will open up the room to a discussion of Dr. Cooper's talk. As we open it up, please feel free to use the chat function to pose a question or a comment, or you could also raise your hand and let us know that you'd like to speak. And members of the planning team will call on attendees and facilitate that discussion. So we thought today, in recognition of this new starting time, we would focus the conversation around the relationship of race and time. And as I mentioned, these events, these current events in the news that remind us of 5-6 years ago when we started this, unfortunately, it's a very fitting topic. And I won't say too much more. I'll let Cooper's talk for itself, but I'll just briefly give an introduction that Brittney Cooper is a writer, teacher, and public speaker. She is an associate professor of women's and gender studies and Africana studies at Rutgers University. And along with teaching, Cooper uses digital platforms and blogging as a virtual classroom to encourage conversations about racism, popular culture, and patriarchy. And I am going to be sharing my screen and playing the TED Talk. Right. Welcome back. We had some people join while we were watching. That was Brittney Cooper's 2017 TED Talk titled The Racial Politics of Time. And before we get into discussing Dr. Cooper's ideas, we wanted to have just a quick poll. So will launch that now. And it's just a yes or no, one question. Or you can say, I don't know. It looks like almost everyone's answered. I'll give it another few seconds before I close it down. All right, closing the poll now. And you should be able to see the results now. 19 out of 22 agree with the statement. We had one disagreement, and a couple didn't know whether they agree or not. Um, so to start our discussion of the talk, I would invite in. I see Sarah Beth has joined us and the other members of the planning team. Sarah Beth, maybe I can ask you, not to put you on the spot, but you did bring this to the team. If you just wanted to share a little of why you thought this would be a good place to start.
Thank you, Asa. I teach around neurodiversity, which is a topic near and dear to my heart because I am neurodiverse. And in conversations and in training, one conference I especially love, Autism in Black, the conversation went to this topic. And it went to this topic because there's a term that has been developed to talk about the behavior of autistic children through a therapy, in air quotes. I don't think it's very therapeutic, controversial. It's called ABA. But in this therapy, the behavior of children um, has been viewed as problematic around time, and especially around demands. And this term is pathological demand avoidance. And the field of psychology is utilizing this term not just to help people understand that the approach we use with each other when we have an ask is critical. That if we're not in attunement with ourselves and with others, that what we can be doing is conveying a demand, which is not an ask. And that demand can create resistance. And in conversations with people talking about oppression and white-centered education, this issue has been raised of the problem of diagnosing or creating labels for the way that we grapple with time. And there's so many reasons for the differences in our approaches to time. And I love that she starts with how she deals with time personally and how her relationship to her culture and the way that people talk about time and relate to it and laugh about it and find some community with behavior is so important to really understanding our different approaches. But here in a higher ed situation, I think, especially for faculty, we're always thinking about time. We've got deadlines, students have deadlines, we're thinking about our work, we're thinking about our meetings, and we're also trying to think about belongingness and how we relate to each other around time, how we communicate expectations of time. But for me, I think that question of how we label time and whose time it is an important question to ask when we're in classes, when we're in social spaces like this, but even when we're with our reading material and how we're thinking about the work that we're doing. that's meant for our conversations together and for grading and all the things that lead to uh, receiving a diploma or a degree. So that was why I was so interested in Dr. Cooper's work, but also just exploring how people relate to time themselves and how culturally based that learning is, and that communication of expectations that we got when we were young, and how we show up and what we think about being late and what we think about no-shows in the realm of therapy. That's a very big deal, how we respond to clients who no-show, and how we accept where people are at and their ways of engaging with time, I think is a critical issue. But I loved what Dr. Cooper had to say about this, because it asks us to think about our value and the value of those that we spend time with and we're working with, and those in our community as well, which to see all that's going on right now and the calls that people are getting to act in different ways. Time is really important. Thanks, Asa.
Thanks so much, Sarah Beth. Um, yes, great. Thank you. Is it Ivana?
Some say Ivana, but I say
Ivana.
Ivana, and you can use both.
Oh, I missed how I should actually say it. Oh,
Either way, but I was just making a joke, honestly.
oh, okay, okay. Sorry, my volume cut out. But yes,
Yeah,
please, please, welcome.
yeah. Well, I was late. It's also a funny, but Ivana or Ivana. If you're my family, Ivana. But yeah. Anyway, I thought this was so profound given the work that I do. I am the executive director of Queer the Land, but also just a human being, a Black mother. As you can see, I have my kid here. And I always love talking about moving at the speed of trust, and that the sense of urgency is white supremacy, and how it shows up in a multitude of ways, whether it's academia. As soon as I started listening to this, I was just like, Antioch has taken so much of my time. My dedication to my studies has been a detriment to my health, and I have to do this to get this piece of paper that is very valuable, of course. A lot of you um, have done a lot of work, but it is what, I have to do to be taken seriously despite my lived experiences in the world. Um, I was just taking notes, and I will try not to ramble, so please tell me to stop. But it's so profound in my everyday life that I actually had to go Facebook Live and really demonstrate what that looks like around the theft of time. Um, in positions of power, whether you're a president or you're an executive director like me, um, the theft of time when it comes to Black people, Black mothers, Black individuals, Black blah, 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 is just that stress, that burnout, your car being repossessed, having the money. It's a lot of things. And you are forced into this perpetual um, sense of urgency. I had a pain in my neck, in my back, and I thought it was because of breastfeeding. I had a kid in August, and it wasn't. It was because of just, I got to turn in my assignments. I just had a baby. I got to show up to class. I just had a baby. I have to go and do this like perpetual thing. Survive now. Comply to Antioch's policies now. Um, do this now. Don't want to appear manic. And what does that look like if I do? What will be taken away from me? And so it is so much more. I felt like Brittney provided a baseline, and she does not have the ability to be like the everyday person and just like, for lack of a better term, run down the street naked screaming that like this is like not normal. It's so crazy to be in this world and have to be forced to be to be adjusted, and I'm a maladjusted person. And so I guess I hope I'm making sense that like the concept of time in the context of white supremacy is the ultimate form of gaslighting. It is brutal. It is it's a lot. So I honestly could ramble. I feel like I could write 16 papers from about this. And so I really love this conversation. Too bad we only have an hour for this. So thank you so much. And I'm so, so happy to see all of my professors here. I love you all so much. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ivana. There was a lot of profound statements in there that I'm processing still. And I think one thing from Dr. Cooper's talk that you remind me of was this idea that the the same people in power who dictate the pace of the workday, the pace of like hourly pay, also dictate historically the pace of social inclusion and like racial progress, and that those things are intricately linked. Keeping busy in one domain so to kind of slow down things in the other, maybe, or that those are kind of levers that can be pulled and manipulated. Oh, I see Stephanie is leaving it, but so glad you could join. And I did want to point out the series that Dr. Helms-Pigott has been organizing. I'll put information in the chat because I think it is relevant to this discussion as well. But I also want to stop talking and just open up the floor. Other thoughts?
This is Holly. I'm a CFT student at Antioch, Seattle. Um, One of the things that really hit home for me is the correlation she made from our systemic, as a systems thinker. I'm looking at everything at a systemic level. So when she talked about the North Carolina incident where they shot down the medical, but like really looking at a systems level and how our systems are set up and what rules and hoops and red tape we put in place with our systems that affect the people that are working with subsystems that don't interact. And so, Ivana, when you were talking about, your school and you're a mom and, all your positionality, I think too, like we really have to look at it at a systemic level when we're leaders in organizations and how our rules and decisions affect the marginalized populations and the structures that they're working within. Kind of what Sarah Beth was saying about, autism and all the places that there are to navigate within the structure that has the system that tells us where to be and the time and where to put our energy. And then all the steps that go through to get to the next level. So I just thought that was a really beautiful way to frame how our systems impact our time as we show up as individuals coming from all these different places.
Yeah, reminding me of, advising with students and how a student will have a different experience with every professor. And the expectation of every professor is different. And I remember in my first year, almost 30 years ago now, I had a student who said, "Why can't you all just do it the same?" And I said, "Well, that's an interesting idea. That would we be able to be your professors? We're all different in the world. How could we represent all the different ways of thinking about this world in addition to all of your ways as students and the myriad ways of the rest of folks out there?" And I think of, there's something called universal design, which is actually about how we make things accessible for people. And I feel that I am constantly moving between this idea of universal design and really thinking about many different student needs and approaches to time and expectations of time and assignments. And the more options I give, often the I see my students being confused. And then I'll reel in and come up with one or two options, and inevitably people want more options put back on the table. And so it feels like a constant, if awareness, it's a constant navigation uh, of really being with each person's way of being with time. Which, I don't know, I think from Ivana's beautiful discussion, it's relatable that time itself will fluctuate. Our relationship with time every day, all day, day to day will change for each of us in addition. And it's really complicated. Think about, to go back and think about Dr. Cooper's connections that she was making between, you know, who is who is standing in power and who makes decisions that affect everyone's navigation of time. I think in higher ed, the faculty and the administration do hold a lot of that. And it takes a lot of time to be with each student. It takes a lot of time and building trust to even have students show up for a meeting with you to talk about support needs. And even when you offer it, it doesn't always it doesn't always get get to the student who wants it or needs for many reasons. So I feel like how do we build our own communication about our relationship with time in our relationships with each other, where we with each other well or not? I guess that's a question I'm always asking.
Thank you, Sarah Beth. I see Rosa, you have hand up.
You. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Ivana, that gorgeous baby. I was waiting for the baby and now I saw the baby. Speaking of time, I was waiting to see that baby and now I'm not waiting anymore. Okay? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ivana. Okay. I'm I felt the need to consider this, bring up a point that is kind of in the lines of a on the other hand kind of perspective. And the other kind of perspective is that the reason we are here today and we have 26 people in the room, uh, and that the majority hasn't been part of these conversations before. And the reason is because we open up the time to make sure that we had a schedule that was more inclusive. But at the same time, we probably exclude others because this is the nature of time. Time and space, as the speaker was talking about, is so connected, right? So the moment you start thinking about the time in terms of space and how it occupies space, in many ways, I thought about what we all know, especially Antioch University, about colonialism, the idea of taking over others, right? And somehow the conversation, as I listened to the TED Talk, was going to that direction, taking over or imposing own preference over others, which is the way. So what I see is this interesting tension about how can I possibly, and I would say that we have this mandate, and this way I leave my work at Antioch. I see a mandate to be as pliable as possible when students are underlying their needs, right? We need to be pliable. We need to be like inclusive. And what I wanted to point out is that what happens when you are excluding others by including some. And it's that dynamic. It's a paradox. So I just keep thinking about the paradox. I don't think there's a solution for it, but it's interesting to think about if I change the timing for some might affect others. If if I would like to be inclusive for the majority in a room, that means creating an artificial minority with those that are not going to be there. So it's I don't know if I'm just putting that on the table. Is I don't have any particular solution, but it's when you accommodate, you also exclude. It's a paradox. Sorry, I'm going to stop
Yes.
myself because then I'm going to keep saying the same.
Well, this reminds me, Rosa, of what I've been thinking about with this talk as well. And maybe because it's of what was so heavily in the news the last few days, but this idea of immigration and nativeness or indigeneity, and like who it's very much a conversation about time. Or when do you start the clock? When do you stop it? When do you say, at this point, these people are immigrants, and before that, these are native people? Or, you can draw lines in history and in time, and it changes the entire framing of the issue just by defining the time differently. And I think we see that with like immigration and law in the US, and as well as overseas, and as you mentioned, like colonialist projects, deeply related to that idea of time and like the mastery of time. Um, so yeah, that's what I was thinking of too. And she raises it in the context of like gentrification as well. Um, she says there are what's the phrase? There are space takers and world makers under that conception. And like those who control time are the world makers, and everyone else are just space takers. And that felt really relevant at this time.
I think I would pose a question to the group. Where else in your journey do you see time having a race in your experience?
Dude,
Hi,
thank you.
Sue. Go ahead.
So
Hi, Holly. I uh, this was really fabulous what I heard. I'm so sorry I missed the entirety of her presentation, and I will go back. And I don't know that I have a specific answer to Holly what you just posed. And not knowing what Dr. Cooper had said about it, you made me think of the power of time, time in relationship to those that are in power. And I agree definitely that those in power most often, at least in the experience, in the majority, in this specific reference that Dr. Cooper was making, the majority are generally not Black people being in power to regulate the time. However, what Ivana spoke of time moving at the speed of trust, and thinking what you were just sharing, Rosa, about in those instances that a schedule time may not work for everyone, with building trust and that recognition are also opportunities to be able to engage in what will work better or what have you. So I just really wanted to add that perspective and really weave in that beautiful phrase of time moving at the speed of trust, and that is not a light switch that you turn off. Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that connection of the power, right? Like time has such a value, and who holds the power holds the value. And the yeah, I don't know, I just really loved, and then linking that to the speed of trust. Like what is, we can't really measure trust, right? And value of time and trust. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful connection. Thank you for sharing. I think even though you missed it, you like tied it all together. I'm gonna go ahead and say, Bonnie, go for it.
Yeah. Just hold on one second. Holly, Irion asked if you can once again repeat the question that you posed so that it doesn't fall into the cracks. And then and then we go with Bonnie immediately. Of course, Bonnie, with your rainbow in the background.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, just Bonnie, go ahead.
This may be sort of a sideways loop around answer, but that time moving at the speed of trust to me was really like central to the discussion. What I was thinking about was like time as a currency of urgency and other traits of white dominant culture. Like in my experience, what a sense of urgency takes from me, it distracts me from my values. It distracts me from what's important and puts in front of me and sort of forefronts what's been put in front of me. And so that urgency, when I'm feeling that urgency, I need to tie that to a need to stop and start thinking about what I value and what's important rather than what has just been put in front of my face. And I think that's like a part of white dominant culture, is the distraction of the media and the commercialism and the beating the being better than the Joneses, that competition aspect. And I think time intensifies all of those traits of white dominant culture. And I think it's intentional by white dominant institutions, and we don't realize how our time gets. We realize after the fact that our time has been sucked away, and that we wish we maybe had done something different with that time. And I also think about it in the classroom, where we feel this pressure to cover the content versus develop or and develop relationships and teaching people how to learn so that they can learn more stuff in the future, versus like, I just have to cover this content to get through this class. That's a lot of jumble that doesn't directly answer your question, but that's what was resonating with me.
Love it. Thank you. Vana?
Hey, sorry, I was moving around because I'm starving, but I wanted to provide a little pushback on how do we quantify trust, because I was like, that is simple. You quantify trust by conflict, in order to know how we, okay, in order and I've been a community organizer for a decade, since I was like 20, I'm 31. And if I don't know anything about you and you don't know anything about me, and you see me cussing somebody out on the street, you're going to perceive me in a certain type of way. Um, for example, that moment of tension, um, instead of going silent, what does it look like to push through and be vulnerable and say, hey, I am broke as shit. I don't have anything, or My car is about to be repossessed, or X, Y, and Z is about to happen, which is why I was looping in my job. Being able to be in a position of power where somebody says, I can't show up to your thing because I um need $30 for gas. Are you serious? Let me put my card down. Trust. But also stating that like people go silent, and instead of going silent, you build trust by naming that thing that you need. And that is what I'm saying. And that's why I was just like, oh wow, we can quantify trust, and I can tell you that 16 different types of ways. When another example, someone is hurt, instead of editing yourself, for example, in Sarah Beth's classes talking about neurodivergency, what does it look like for me to flap my arms and say I'm not going to mask that, like, this is overstimulating, but we must get through the moment. So instead of self-editing, what do? I speak and name what that thing is. That is how you quantify trust. Um, Lastly, another example, someone messes up terribly, and um, in a low trust system, you hide it, you try to rectify it instead of just saying, look, man, and if you've been my professor, I am not gonna submit my things on time, and I would hide it instead of just telling, for example, Rosa or Sarah Beth, I don't know, whoever, that like I just can't do it right now, and this is why I can't do it right now. For example, having a miscarriage, or having being pregnant, or just being tired, y'all, falling asleep. And so that's what I'm saying when I'm saying you can actually quantify and measure trust. It just looks and feels a little bit different. So that is all. Thank you.
Andrea?
Thank you, Ivana, for saying those important words. One of the things this reminds me of, um, and I know that it's specifically related to race, but it's definitely about time, is we have these deadlines. And if you don't complete your work by this particular moment, there are consequences, right? And students get incompletes, and then it puts them on academic warning, we're going to throw you out. And yet, at the same time, we allowed students to do prior learning. And one of our faculty many years ago said, why wouldn't we give credit to a student for work they did 10 weeks ago if we'll give them credit for work they did 10 years ago? Like, why are we putting deadlines by which you have to learn and demonstrate that learning? Um, and it always comes to me as like, is that an ENIAC thing? Or is that a Department of Education thing? Like, why is that a thing? And what is it we can do to push back? Because not everybody learns in the same, like we've designated, you have 10 weeks to learn this and demonstrate that you've learned it, and then we're done. And I was like, so who made that up? Um, and, you know, and how do we push back and make space for different ways of learning and different timelines for learning?
Thank you, Andrea. You're making me think about class content and how what we're teaching, what we're engaging with each other will also dictate the way that people grapple with their time and the time required to do the work. The more personal the learning is, the more time it usually takes. The more I'm applying it to someone else's life, I'm in a helping role, this is a technical skill course where I'm adding to skills I already need in a field, it takes less time. And so that experience we have with each other across race, across all of our identities, really requires us to know ourselves, but also to explore other identities that we're not so familiar with, so that we can bridge the gap and we can have conversations that help ourselves, but also help us to apply what we're learning in so many different ways to so many different experiences and people's lives.
I would just add that takes time and space and non-judgmental perspectives to help create the trust and the engagement.
Mary Lou, I think, was trying to get in.
Yeah, I just really appreciated the conversation. And I want to go back to what Sue Byers said earlier about time, the issue being power. Who has power to over other people, and to make rules that would have time relatedness to them. And so that's one of the things that really, and I can see labeling that as white in a white dominant culture, but the essence of it seems to me to be power. And, I guess I think the interesting conversation for Antioch to have is um, how can we be more flexible? I mean, I was in Antioch a long time, and I feel like um, that we were able in certain periods to be fairly flexible based on what students needed. And it sometimes is personal things, that are in the way. And sometimes, as somebody was articulating a bit ago, it's kind of, with that you, Sarah Beth, it's the depth of the work that we're asking. Sometimes it's really hard for people to do that in a hurry. And if you make them do that in a hurry, they can't get to the depth that it's really possible to get to for them. So it's kind of a learning issue as well. So anyway, I look forward to thinking about how the rules can be as flexible as possible, and so that there is space for people to learn in their own way in their own time, whatever that might be. I think that's.
I loved your comments, Ivana, about quantifying time, and this is a part of my doctoral dissertation work. Uh, John Gottman did quantify this trust-making pattern, and what he found in research was literally that attunement are the building blocks to attachment. And we can attach to each other, we can attach to objects, we can attach to all kinds of things, but it's in our human relationships and our social relationships that we have the opportunity to have interface, to get something back, to share and to receive, to give and to take, and all of that back and forth, which I think of kind of like an elliptical movement. And the examples you gave of difficult experiences, of conflict experiences, of things that are challenging to us in the way of problem solving, but also being there with each other, are just as important in building trust as the positive experiences that we have of asking questions of each other, like, what do you like to do? What are fun things for you? What's your baby's name? What is your goal in life in terms of your career path? All of those questions of us that we get to know each other from and build that knowledge with each other really build that trust. And so when we have micro questions that show up, whether we've built any trust is going to be the mediating factor of whether people are willing to work through those challenges or whether they're like, no, thank you. And then don't forget about the common experiences of life that Ivana started us with, of the complexity of all the things that every human is dealing with, and the ways in which stress and life experience challenge us. But I say this because each attunement can be healthy or unhealthy. It can be positive, it can be negative, it can be a combination. We can have somebody say some really nice things and then add a backhanded compliment on the end of it. And what Gottman's research found that it takes a minimum of 5 positives to overwhelm one tiny little negative. That's a lot. I think it's more like 29 to 1. That's been my experience. And when you have a trauma history, it can be more like 529 to 1. And so the more positives we spend on each other, the more likely we are to build that trust, which will potentially lower our anxiety about being in social spaces, about the potential for microaggressions, and help us to keep on this path of being curious about each other and also bringing our full selves to our engagements in spaces where belonging is what we wish for.
We have reached the hour,
Well said.
but we can keep going a little bit longer.
I will add some resources per your chat comments here. I'll put them on the site. And so if you're wanting to see those in the next week, I'll post those for you.
You were mute, Sue. You were saying something recently. You were.
Oh, I just was saying, well said. I just appreciate that Sarah Beth shared. And this discussion. It really takes me back to the classroom, the engagement with students, and even in the role that I'm in now, that engagement and our mindfulness and that idea of 5 positives to, did you say overtake?
Yeah, it actually, they check the physiology and it takes you to baseline if you have at least 5.
Wow, isn't
Yeah.
that something? Thank you.
All right, on theme, I do have to run. I'm out of time. But I'm going to hand it off to Sarah Beth to close it out or continue on if you like. I know we're trying to keep it close to an hour, so
Yes.
thank you all so much.
being
Oh,
here.
also, did want to announce that we will not have a session next week. We'll be off in honor of MLK Day. But please do look out for a message coming from our team around celebrating MLK, and then we'll be back the following week. Thank you all.
Please join us then. Yeah, thanks, Asa. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.